The purpose of this video is to go over some important technology notes, things to keep you safe and in compliance with the district's acceptable use policy. First and most importantly, do not, under any circumstances, give out your password to other teachers, to students. They are designed for your access and your access alone. Teachers are sometimes apt to write them on Post-it notes and stick them to their computer or write them on the board for them to remember, whether it's the wireless password or a password into the filter or whatever. Students, parents, others who come into the building do not need to see or have access to that information. There are people, however, who will try to get your password information from you through phishing practices, especially in email. Phishing is when somebody sends out a malicious email designed to look legitimate in an effort to get your personal information. Some tips as to how you can tell if an email is a phishing email. Pay attention to the address that the email comes from, especially the ending of the address, because our email addresses are often posted on websites. People can take the same beginning of an email and it will look like at a glance that it's coming from a coworker or an administrator or someone like that. But if you pay attention to the ending and it's not atlex2.org, that can be a giveaway that it's a phishing email. If they are sharing a document with you that you're not expecting, especially if they're very vague about it and said, "Here, I found this, I want to share it with you, click here, this is really cool, take a look." Generic statements like that should make you suspicious. Anytime that you click on a document and it prompts you to enter your password to be able to see the document, steer clear of that. Do not enter your password. That is most likely a phishing attempt as well. Watch for some of those signs. If you're not sure if an email is legitimate, please contact the person via phone or a separate email and say, "Is this something that you sent out?" and get confirmation before you click on attachments or open documents. Teachers in Lexington 2 are not permitted to stream movies or music for non-instructional purposes. There is a limited amount of bandwidth for the district, and when teachers are streaming content that doesn't serve an instructional purpose, it takes away bandwidth from those who are trying to use it for instructional purposes. If it is a video for instructional purposes that can be downloaded ahead of time so that it doesn't have to stream, that preserves bandwidth, but it also a lot of times improves the quality of the playback. If you have additional programs or software that you either want to use or need to use for instruction, please do not install or download those programs onto your computer yourself. Any software that needs to be installed on computers should be done by computer services. You can have your school's point of contact, who's responsible for submitting work orders to computer services, put in that you need a particular software installed, and they will come out and do that. If they find software or programs that have been installed that are not approved or that were not installed through the proper channels, they will remove them from district computers. A final point, if you are issued any district mobile technology, please be mindful of keeping track of it. You are responsible for the device. It is checked out to you, and so should something become lost, you are responsible for the cost of that device. Accidental damage or theft should be reported immediately to your administrator and to your school's technology coach, who can assist you in next steps. Loss, however, is your responsibility. Finally, I want to discuss the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, also known as COPA. If you teach students who are under 13 years of age, this applies directly to you. If you teach students who are older than that, well, you do not have to abide by the provisions of COPA. It is good information and best practice to still adhere to these guidelines.
The Children's Online Privacy Protection Act is a federal statute that prohibits the collection of personal information from children via websites or online on the internet. And with few exceptions, It prohibits the collection of any personal information from children without having verified parental consent.
COPA has two main criteria for when it needs to be applied. The first, as we mentioned, is when students are below 13 years old. The second is when you are using websites that require students to create or sign in with accounts or to submit information about themselves in order to use the site. Parents entrust their children to you and expect you to keep students safe. This includes students' personal information in a digital world. The Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPA, outlines your legal responsibilities in handling students' information and sharing it with website operators or application developers. So what exactly is personally identifiable information? Well, it covers a wide range of things. It includes social security number. It includes address, and this could be your physical home address, or it could also refer to email address, one of the most commonly requested pieces of information. Student's name, any kind of digital identifier. This could be the IP address of the connection. It could be the serial number of the device that a student is using. Any digital photograph, video, or audio recording of the student. Their location. Online contact information such as username or screen name, and then telephone number. All of these are considered personally identifying information that by law, you are not allowed to give a website without parental consent. There are some websites used at the district level and at the school level that require students to log in. These programs have been vetted for safety and security of information, and so there is no conflict in students using these. The educational institution, be it the district or the school, has legal permission to create student accounts for these sites. The one exception to that rule is if a parent completes a FERPA form that they do not want their student information released. That also supersedes any kind of district or school purchased site. They cannot have an account on that website. COPA, in this case, primarily deals with sites that you may want to use in your individual classroom or as a grade level that's not more widely adopted by the entire school or by the district. So if you're not allowed to release personal information without parental consent, what safeguards are there that can still allow access to the site without violating the legal protections under COPA? Well, here are 4 primary ways that you can safeguard student information. Using a pseudonym or a pen name is probably the most common. Rather than using student names in generating accounts, if my last name was Brown, my usernames would be Brown1, Brown2, Brown3, Brown4, so on, and students would just be assigned one of those fake names. That way there's no way, other than a mental record that I keep in my classroom, there is no way for a website operator to be able to tie an account to an individual student. Secondly, you can use student initials instead of their full name. First and last initials are not considered personally identifying information because there are thousands of people with those same initials. Sometimes it's possible to create one class account for everyone to use and sign in under. This would be if students didn't have to save individual progress or individual work. You could create one class account and use your teacher information in the generation of that account. And finally, only complete the required fields. Just because a website operator asks for information does not mean that you are required to give it to them. The minimum information that you can provide and still create an account is best. Finally, when those accounts are no longer in use, whether it's the end of the school year, the end of the unit, whenever you are done, best practice is to delete those accounts so that they're not sitting out there with the student's information. All of those safeguards may allow you to still create an account without violating COPA and releasing student personal information. However, if there's a situation where you would like to use a website, it is not adopted by the school or district already, and safeguards will not prevent you from having to release some information, you need to be well informed to gain that parental consent. Every website has a privacy policy. It is important that you locate and read that privacy policy so that you understand what information the site requires, how that information is stored, and what is done with that information once they receive it. There are lots of ways to locate a site's privacy policy. Oftentimes, if you scroll down to the very bottom of a site, there will be a link directly to their policy, and you can click there. However, if you can't find a link along the bottom, if they have a search feature for their website, if you type in privacy policy, it will often pull up the same page. If both of those methods fail, however, and you're unable to locate a site's privacy policy, please reach out to your school's instructional technology coach. We can assist you in locating that, or are happy to reach out to the website operator through phone or email and get that information if it's not already available or easily accessible on their website. You will need to send home some information about the website, and we'll get into the specifics of what that needs to contain. But just some general points to bear in mind. Notification must be made in the student's home language. Language cannot be a barrier to parents understanding the consent process. So, if you are wanting to use a website, you will need to have that permission form translated into whichever home languages are represented in your classroom. That is not something that happens quickly. There needs to be some time in there for that translation to occur so that it is accurate and informative. Consent must be collected for each student. If there is a student that does not return that permission form, that parental consent form, they cannot have an account. And as mentioned earlier, if parents have opted out of information release via the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act or FERPA, even if they return a permission form saying that they grant you permission to create an account on this website for their child, the FERPA form supersedes this COPA permission form. So if there's contradictory information, if at the beginning of the year they said you cannot release this information, and now they've turned something in that says that you can, the first no is overriding. COPA was written with a deference to FERPA, so you would have to contact the parent, explain the discrepancy, and give them an opportunity to turn in a new FERPA form. It's very tempting to look at the one student maybe who didn't return a form, especially if you know the parent well, and say, well, they wouldn't mind, they wouldn't object, they wouldn't have a problem, it's going to be so much easier if I can just create an account for everybody. But by law, there has to be a form on file for every student who has an account created. There are three main ways a website can collect parental consent. The first is to require parents to sign up their children directly on the website. This method removes the teacher from the equation, but requires that the teacher gain parental cooperation in getting the child signed up. The second way a website can collect information is to have a downloadable and printable consent form for parents to complete and sign. That form then gets mailed to the website operator for them to retain on file. The third, and probably the most common way that websites collect parental information, is that they ask the teacher to develop a consent form to send it home with students and to collect and keep on file in the classroom completed forms. This way, the teacher can prove parental consent if there was ever any question about the release of student information. There are some required details in that parental notification. You see an example of a notification letter here. I want to point out some specific pieces of information that must be included. You have to let parents know the name of the website that you will be using. Also, the instructional purpose for using the site. Referencing the privacy policy of the website, you need to list out exactly what personal information will be collected by this website. It's important to provide links to the terms of service and the privacy policy of the webpage in case parents want to investigate the information themselves. And finally, the date the account will be created. I would suggest requiring the permission form to come back a day or two prior to when you plan to create accounts, so you can clear up any discrepancies or issues that may arise. COPA is a very important piece of the technology integration puzzle, and it does have legal ramifications if you fail to abide by its provisions and a parent challenges the release of their student's information. Thank you for taking the time to view this information. Please complete the Google form authorizing that you have watched this and agree to abide by all of the information set forth in this video.